Krista, thank you for being here. We are ending the year of our retail series, so it's nice to see you again. And thank you for your partnership throughout the year. I've learned a ton, but last week at the Lift Show, a lot of other people are learning from this series as well. So it was a nice vote of confidence when we saw people in person.
Thanks for having me. I mean, it's partially because you asked such great questions.
Is that why?
Yes.
I know I'm going to be up over my head in the next part of the conversation with intricacies of banking and banking tech and what some of these companies do. But before we get there, I wanted to talk to you really about two things. The first of which is banking.
Yes.
And I want to get your sense. You work with tons of retailers. You see them from like idea to inception to like them being in the wild and actually operating. Like when you talk to them even early on or later, like what are they thinking about when it comes to banking and where does it fit into their overall operations?
Well, one of the things that we like to ensure when we're working with retailers is that we're reducing the amount of complexity that's built into the business. So finding really great partners that are going to help us do that is key. With banking specifically, it's one of those things when you just want to check it off on the list of things to get done before you open the doors, but how that impacts the day-to-day operations is what you really need to be able to sit on and think about, and what kind of complexity you want to build into the business. We're going to have to count cash every single day. We're going to have cash in a safe at some point. So what do we do with it? Who is it related to? And then we're also going to have payments, and those payments and being able to provide feedback and work with your payment providers is really important. So I'm really excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, me too. And it strikes me, as you said, that there is lots of complexity to opening up a cannabis retail store. There is regulatory complexity. There is real estate complexity. You have to run a business once you're operating. There is, you have to have a lot of money up front to make the purchase in a Terra Cannabis store. There's lots of these things. So I want to ask you, when the retailers are going into it, are they looking at, like, of course, building their own team, people will work in the store, but it's like the team behind the team, bank, payments, cash, whatever, security, whatever those things are. Like, is that how you're telling them to think about it or suggesting they think about it?
100%. Like, we need to be meeting vendors or people that are going to help us in a way that we can rely on them and that they're going to be accountable as well. When we are getting started, it's easy to like make a list as you get to getting the doors open and check off items along the way. But we really want to make sure that those relationships are quality, because when we have something that is going wrong or we need something changed, how receptive is the partner going to be? And that can create a lot of headache on the back end, and something that we can avoid if we are picking the right partners early. So understanding like who we're picking, how well we know them, and how much they are willing or can be there to support you on the other side is really important.
Yeah, and one of the things that we talk about a lot sort of on this series and just in general is that there is retail that people sort of understand and know. Then there's cannabis retail, which has all kinds of layers of challenge up and down sort of what you're doing. And like from your experience, being with folks, partners, vendors, whatever it is, that have actually done these things before, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how valuable?
So valuable. Like it really can be the make or break of your business. What people don't anticipate is that once you get the doors open, it only gets more complex. We have team relationships, we have relationships with the customer, we have inventory to manage. And so all of those pieces are going to take up time. And so knowing where we can buy ourselves more time with the right partnerships becomes really important.
So Krista, we're talking at the retail series today, and it strikes me that it is November 24th, which also strikes me that tomorrow is American Thanksgiving. So I will be in Boston with my family, but that traditionally kicks off like a mad frenzy at any kind of retail. When you're talking to cannabis retailers about the next month, and I would even include sort of 5 or 6 weeks as we head into New Year's, are there things they ought to be thinking about? This has nothing to do with banking, the topic of the day, but more about sort of being ready as a retailer for this season. Like, what should we be bracing ourselves for if we're retailers?
I mean, getting ready for the holidays, there's 2 things that are going to be going on. You're getting probably close to year end, which we want to be able to manage and tie up a lot of the pieces of the business, which would revolve around inventory. And then the second piece is that your customer behavior fundamentally changes. So your customers, you might see the same behavior from your regulars, but there are a lot more shoppers out there who are willing to try a new store or are purchasing for somebody else. And so we have an opportunity to get to know people coming into our store on a different level, and hopefully add them to our regulars as well. And so gift giving, and being aware of who the people who are coming into the store are and what they're up to, how that might be different from our historical sales pattern is really important. Purchasing behavior shift as well. Types of products that we're selling, as well as quantity can really change when we get closer to the holidays. And so we need to be able to plan that into our merchandising strategy. So like the product that shows up in store, from a physical viewable perspective from the customer, as well as the inventory and the assortment mix that matches that.
Yeah, it is fundamentally different, I would imagine, because like people are out like as the day of shopping, they're looking at all the money they're spending in aggregate and willing to spend and want to bring that thing to either someone's house or to their family or back home that is new, different, fun, innovative, all of those things. And now that I'm thinking my own shopping purposes over the next 5 weeks, it does sort of change things. And it's overlaid on, at least in Ontario, a period of time where we were, in COVID and lockdown and weren't actually in stores, and there's way more stores. So it's like,
Yes.
there's lots of overlays on top of the season. And for many people, this will be the first mad rush into their store, I would imagine, for many of these retailers.
Yeah, I mean, last year we looked and felt very different in Ontario and really across the country because of COVID. And that's not to say that that isn't still impacting the business today, but it is impacting it on a bit of a different scale. And so we need to be able to step back and say, we have a couple weeks to plan this. And there's a lot of moving stakeholders involved in the holidays. It's not just your customers, but it's your team as well. And so being able to sit down with the group today and say, well, how do we want to run around the holidays? What's it going to look like so that we're balancing your personal lives as well as the needs of the business is really important. That's going to ultimately also set you up for success with your customers. So it's right now is a big opportunity to start to forecast around inventory and plan with the team around what you're going to need to be able to facilitate the business around the holidays. And then as you get closer to the holidays, it's really being super focused on what the customer behavior is, if it's shifting on a week over week basis, and understanding that the purchasing behaviors are going to be different. And so our selling behaviors probably need to be a little bit different as well.
Yeah. God, you're really thinking about everything because it actually does come back.
Retail, at the end of the day, it's retail. We know these things from other industries, but where this impacts cannabis is around our inventory purchasing behavior looks a little bit different, as well as our relationships with customers tend to look a little bit different. And so we can take the patterns that we've learned from traditional retail and apply it to cannabis.
I think there was about a decade where on New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve, when it's everybody's time to buy booze, the lineups at the LCBO and the beer store are just, outrageous.
Well, especially because those locations close around the holidays or are not open. So you have this mad rush to be able to accommodate that. Those are things that we need to take into consideration as well. Are we closing the doors? How long are we closing them for? How might that shift our customer behavior? And then does that create an opportunity for us to sell more because we aren't going to be as accessible to our customer? As well as shareables. I mean, there are so many really interesting seasonal products right now available across the country. And I think as gift giving, those are really fun.
I think so too. There are some interesting products that people were talking about and showing around the Lift Show last week, including hot sauce, but also just the array of sort of flavors and formats of edibles and pre-rolls and flour. It really is, it's a pretty dynamic marketplace, and overlapping with sort of holiday buying patterns and systems is going to be interesting to watch in hindsight. And our friends from Headset will tell us all the things we need to know as we sort of head into January. But Krista, thank you for this, both talking about sort of the importance of, thinking about your vendors as partners as we talk about banking in the next section, but also sort of how retailers should be thinking about getting ready for the next 5-6 weeks. So as always, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jay.